Welcome into the second edition of the Investor's Guide to Our Money Lending, brought to you by CoreLend Financial. Today we have with us a very reputable local wholesaler, Jonathan Wiener with Ready Door Homes, to kind of go through wholesaling, what it's all about, what to look for, what type of deals to look for. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, John.
Glad to be here.
All right. So tell me, within the hard money lending, how does that work for you as a wholesaler?
Yeah, so I think what wholesalers have to understand, or buyers wanting to buy from a wholesaler, is that if you're wholesaling a deal, you have to use some sort of cash or cash equivalent, right? So with hard money, that works because hard money is flexible, right? You can come up and say, hey, I want to buy this deal, and there's a $10K assignment fee or a $15K assignment fee. Hard money allows you to pay an assignment fee and the deal, right? And you can wrap up a lot of all those costs, from what I understand, into the loan. And if not, like, a hard money lender is not going to come to you and say, hey, you can't pay an assignment fee, right? Right. The reason that's important is if you go to Chase Bank or you go to some other traditional financing company and they say, hey, listen, okay, we'll give you the loan and that's great, but we're not going to pay any assignment fee, right? And so one thing you have to understand as a buyer is most of the time, or some of the time, you're going to have to pay an assignment fee out of pocket no matter what, right? But if you're using traditional financing, there are so many more regulations around that and what's possible. Now, there are ways you can find loopholes, but hard money is far and away the most flexible way that you can buy a deal, right? And you could call you or Richie and say, hey, here's what I'm looking to do, and here's the numbers, and they can work with you to some degree to figure out how to make the deal work. You don't get as much of that flexibility with a traditional, the traditional company that's doing traditional financing. So there's just more flexibility. And I mean, all the deals that we do, right? We say this idea of cash offer. 99% of the time, there's some sort of loan involved, whether it's a HELOC or oftentimes, I'd say probably 85%, 90% of the money or the deals that we do is hard money. Hard money's behind us somehow. So I would say, hard money is the key to getting a buyer and a wholesaler to get the deal done, oftentimes, in my experience. Unless you double close or do something like that, that's how you get the deal done.
I would agree. Like you said, we can roll that assignment fee in. We don't second guess that because you brought the deal to us. We can roll some of these fees in and basically set you up to where once you're finished with the burst strategy, or you're flipping it or you're taking it to then the traditional lender, and they can finance all of that because the recap's been done, the assignment fee's been paid, and still works, the numbers work.
Yeah. How cool is it that you can get a deal, get your rehab budget included, and get your assignment fee included? If it's a great deal and all that's covered, then you get in the deal and you just start working, right? And then you can go refi out and all that. So that's ideal. All the deals that even I've purchased for myself has been with hard money every single time. Could I go take out a loan and do that whole process? There's just, the flexibility is just not there. So hard money is far and away the best way that I bought deals, and that all of our buyers do. Even these big, even like turnkey providers, REI Nation and those guys that buy a ton, they're borrowing from somebody, right? So hard money it has its fingerprints in everything with wholesale.
Okay. Yes. So what does a good wholesale deal look like? I know we've talked about daisy chains before, or he's got to kind of enlighten us on those terms.
Yeah. And I think we talked about a different question of like, what does it look like to identify a good wholesaler? Yeah, I think both of these questions kind of come hand in hand. I started on the buy side. So I started my, getting involved with real estate by buying rentals, right? I had a buddy who had some money, had a hard money, right? And then I was going to go buy deals, right? And a couple of the things that I noticed was, especially in a popular city like Memphis, right, where it's a small city, it's compact, like, you're going to get a ton of these daisy chain deals, right? And so the number one question I would ask as a buyer is like, hey, are you direct to seller, right? Are you direct to seller, and do you have a contract on the property, right? If you're dealing with somebody and you're trying to figure out if a wholesale deal is legit and they can't answer those two questions, that's my first red flag, right? Are you direct to seller, and do you have a contract in place, right? You want to figure out if that's legitimate. I think the question you're asking is more so like, what does it feel like to work with a good wholesale deal versus like the numbers on it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So you want to make sure it's direct to seller. You want to make sure it's a contract. I would also say one of the number one ways that when I was buying some wholesaler, and now that we try and do well, honestly, any reputable wholesaler, is, are their valuations correct, right? I cannot, and if you've been buying or you've been in the space forever, ARV is 125 and they're trying to sell it for 115 or 120. And then you call them and you say, hey, what do you think the ARV is here? Oh, there's 200. It's like, and that house is 500 square feet bigger and was built 10 years newer. This is not a comp, right? And so you really, I would say, put it on the buyer. Like, if you want to know if a good wholesale deal is a deal, Well, you need to know how to pull comps or have an idea of someone who can pull comps from you. Maybe it's a trusted agent or maybe CoreLend or whatever. You need to know the valuations, and you need to make sure that the person you're working with is legit, right? The only other thing that I've noticed is like, if you're trying to talk to a wholesaler and they don't have a clear process. Hey, so I'm talking to you right now. You sent me this property via email. What's my process to get this locked up, right? I want to go look at it, whatever. If they seem like they're scattered everywhere, well, I can get you an inspection, but I got this other guy I want to buy and 2 other people, and I don't really know about price. It's like, typically when you're dealing with a reputable wholesaler, they know the valuations, they have a contract, they're direct to seller, and they have a clear process that they take their buyers through of how they buy houses, right? So it's like, when you get off the phone with a wholesaler who's trying to sell you a deal, not everything has to be perfect. There's going to be some stuff up in the air. Hey, I want to accept the best offer, whatever, great. But I know what my next step is to buy the house, right? If you feel like you just talked to someone who has no idea what they're talking about, it's because they have no idea what they're talking about, right? So I think those are a couple of the key components. The only thing I'd add in there is, and this is for the wholesalers out there too, like if wholesalers start getting their feelings hurt because offers are coming in lower, right? Or you're making a good offer, or you're saying, hey man, this is the best I can do. I know you're asking 100, the best I could do is 80. And they start getting frustrated or getting their feelings hurt. Probably not someone that you're going to be able to work with long term.
No, I agree. It's about the numbers. It's not about feelings. It's about the numbers of where the deal works.
Right.
So I agree with you. And then going into, you talk about daisy chain, with our borrowers that of looking at it on this is we underwrote a loan, and we noticed that, well, this property was on the market last year for $30,000 and nothing's been done to it. So it's a year later and they're wanting $80,000 for it. So in essence, there were 4 other wholesalers trying to put a fee on top of that.
Yeah. That happens like crazy. And that's why one of my first questions is, are you direct to seller or are you, and it doesn't make the deal bad necessarily.
Right.
If there are JVs that happen.
Right.
But my main question is, are you direct to seller or is this a JV? Because if it's a JV agreement, then they actually don't have control of the contract. Somebody else does. And you're not talking to that person. And most of the time, they're going to want you to not talk to the person that has the contract because they're just stacking their fee on top of it. And I think this is the key thing, right? When you're daisy training or buying a JV deal, you want that JV to be a contract JV. Because where we get in trouble, especially we've seen in Memphis, we've seen it in Little Rock, is these folks will get a property, get 123 Main Street via email, and without even telling the wholesaler, they'll go try and stack $5K and send it out, right? So they don't actually have any right to the property. They're just trying to make their fee, right? Another way that we see this is if the property's listed. I'll get wholesalers that send me listed properties all the time. Hey, do you want to buy this? And I'll go look it up, and I pop it up on Zillow and it's listed. It's like, do you have a contract? Does the agent know you're wholesaling it? I mean, so again, that question is so crucial. Are you direct to seller? And if not, tell me what's going on here, right? Because if you're JVing a deal and you have a contract, you don't mind to tell someone that. Yeah, I got a contract. My partner's direct to seller. I'm trying to sell it to you. No problem. Like if they're not disclosing that information, that's where I start to figure out, okay, what's really going on?
So you're saying like transparency is key.
Always, 100%. With buyers, with your hard money lender, with anybody. I mean, that's, the longest term buyers and partnerships that we have, we just want to be honest with each other. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you want to sell someone a deal and you say, hey man, I got an inspection and 2 folks are going out and your offer was $10K low. Just be honest. Just tell them what's going on, right? I mean, it's the same way if you go to the MLS and you're making offers on deals with the agent, right? You're going to call the agent and say, hey, my highest and best is 110, right? Might call you back and say, sorry, we took a better offer, right? So that transparency is so key. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. So what are you seeing right now, as far as what you're getting deals under contract for sending these out? What are you seeing on prices? Are you seeing better deals now than you did a year ago? Are you seeing where the prices are rising? What are those numbers looking like now?
Yeah, I think it's not, it's interesting because before like 2021, like the COVID era where interest rates were so low, it's like everyone knew which way the market was going. It's like the market's hot, right? It's not easy to sell stuff. Then we went, I think it was the end of 2023 where things changed a lot. Rates went way up. That was clear where it was like, okay, the market came down. Hedge funds went away. People started being really conservative. You couldn't afford to buy the same. That was clear too. The market kind of turned down. Now I feel like we're kind of in this spot where it's like, no one exactly knows what we think might happen. But it's funny, Douglas, who's a mentor of mine, I talked to him a lot, is like, someone out there is having their best month ever. Like, yeah, that's agent, some flipper, some turnkey provider, someone who buys rent to some wholesaler, they're having their best month ever right now. Right. And so I think what's interesting is we don't really necessarily know what's going on aside from practically houses aren't jumping off the market, right? It's almost like it's normalizing a little bit. It's like, the days of being able to stick a property on the market and it sell in 3 days, like that was abnormal, right?
Right.
And then if you go list a property and it takes 120 days, it's a good property and it's nowhere near value, that's abnormal too. But right now, it's if you got a good product at a fair price, you put it out there, you'll probably get a decent offer. It might not come in as quickly. It might not come in it's not going to come in super low. It's definitely a little bit more difficult now. Takes a little more patience to get a deal done. But it doesn't mean that there aren't deals to be done, right? The only thing I would encourage any buyer to do is just hey, just be a little more conservative, be a little more patient maybe. Or just be willing to have the worst case scenario in place, right? Hey, I bought it, I did a good rehab, I listed it for 120 days, it didn't sell. Can I keep it as a rental if I need to, right? That's not the worst thing ever either. I mean, there's a bunch of people at the end of 23 that turn their retail flips into rentals.
Yes.
Now they're listing them coming into the selling season again this year. So I think it's hard to answer that question. No one's got a crystal ball. But I wouldn't be afraid to buy. Don't be afraid,
And speaking to that factor, not being afraid to buying, what was moving the quickest right now for you? Properties that you get under contract. Is it more the retail flip, or is it the turnkey rental, or is it the bar? Where?
Yeah, I mean the rental right now, the turnkey rental is the one that whether the market is good or bad is typically going to be the bread and butter, right? Where I see folks having trouble, or the property that the asset class that is moving the least is houses in kind of weird locations with not a bunch of comps, right? Where it's I don't know what to do with this, right? There's a brand new build 4 houses down, and then this one's built in 1920, and then that one's has fire damage and no one's touched it in a year, right? Those kind of properties are no one's really touching those as much, right? If you can't comp it, if there's not a neighborhood, those are kind of harder to sell. And then some of the higher end stuff, as an example, I bought a house in Cordova. It was an attached home. Across the street, there was a 3-bedroom, 3-bath I sold for $310, right? Mine was a 5-bedroom, 3-bath. I mean, literally, you could walk out the driveway and walk up the other driveway to the house that sold. I listed it for $279, ended up selling for $259. I had to bring them all the way down. So sometimes that higher end price point, you got to be a little more patient, right? You got to understand what are the days on market, what are the comps look like that are selling, right? So I would say some of the lower end properties, just be a little bit more careful with, a little bit more patient with. That's harder to sell. Some of the higher end stuff, where it's your ARV is 300 plus. That range, it's not that it's not selling, but it's moving a little bit slower right now. But anything that's your brick 3-1 or even just your 3-1 that ARV is 100 to 200, that asset class I think will always be winning, especially in Memphis, right? I mean, if I'm looking to get deals, those are the deals I'm looking at to get into. So why do I say that? It's a versatile asset class, right? You can sell it to an owner occupant, or you can keep it as a rental. Both of those things work well. If you're in a Cordova house and you bought it for 200 and you're trying to sell for 300, it doesn't work out. Well, your note might be pretty hefty to keep it as a rental, right? Doesn't mean you can't do it, but prepare for that, right? Hey, can I cover $1,700 a month on my note? I need to get a renter fit, right? Even if I break even until the market, whatever. So that's what I've noticed, kind of that middle asset class.
Yeah, it's not really on kind of a dual exit strategy. So it's where it makes sense on rents. You could sell it as a turnkey, keep it yourself versus, and that's where I say going into these areas where, say in the suburbs, I've got this great flip I could do in Collierville, say, because the average sales price, but you're stuck in that now for $450,000, but you can only get $3,000 in rent. So where's that?
Exact. Yeah.
Versus I'm over here in the Berkeley area and I've got a solid rental market.
Yeah.
Maybe sell it this, but I know I'm going to get $1,500-1,600 in rent. I'm all into it for $125.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that you're exactly right. If things go wrong, do you have multiple options with it, right? All right, a Collierville flip that's worth $500,000. Going to be hard to rent it, or you'll just have to bleed on a little bit, right? Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So this kind of doesn't. Where do you see, or kind of we don't know, but where does this market do you see going in the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew. Based on what we've seen, I think we're going to continue to move forward with some hesitancy. The buyers are a little bit hesitant, flippers are a little bit hesitant, right? We just don't know exactly what's going on. I know in our business, margins have gotten tighter. It's not that we're not doing the same volume of deals, but some of those margins have come down considerably. So I can speak to that, where it's man, if we did 20 deals in a month, that margin, we still might get close to doing that same amount of deals, as an example, right? But the margins on each of those deals are smaller, right? And so as a flipper, it's man, 2021, I could have flipped this to Progress Residential and made $50,000. Now I need to say, I could still make that flip, but maybe I'm gonna make 20 or 25, right? The margins come down. So I think there's going to be a little bit of kind of that uncertainty. It's like kind of getting into lake water. It's like, I don't really know what's down there. Yeah. But there's plenty of people around and they're all playing and we can jump in. It's probably going to be fine. So I think, I don't know what the market's doing, but I know that as long as you're cautious, right? As long as you understand the numbers on the deal, you're going to be okay. So,
And like, and you speak to lake water, trip to lake water, you never want to dive into a lake. You go feet first.
yeah, you don't know if there's a long red below the surface or whatever. So that's exactly right. So it kind of feels like at one point it was like, yeah, I'm jumping into full water. 2021, I know exactly what's going on here. And worst case scenario, I'm going to be okay, right?
Right.
And then there's this other part where it's like I'm jumping into a swamp and I don't know if there's an alligator in here, right? It's like that's our hedge funds going to watch for that period of time, right? I will tell you, we started getting some emails from some of these larger hedge funds a couple weeks before the election, regardless of who's in office, right?
It had the uncertainty. It was the uncertainty.
Yeah, and so that was the first time that I saw hedge funds coming back into the market. So I got a couple emails from some hedge funds in town, both kind of some of the smaller ones, but then you got your Amherst or Progress, and I'm getting these emails saying, hey, going to Q2 of 2025, we're going to turn it up, right? So if there's anyone that I kind of watch to figure out, hey, what do they know that we don't? It's typically those hedge funds that have got to spend billions of dollars to make a return for their, for their clients. When they start getting aggressive, I start getting excited again, thinking that they have some sort of idea that things are going in a good direction. Now, does that mean that, things are going to get tough and we're going to buy at a discount? I don't know. Or does things are going to get way better and the rate's going to come down? It's going to be easier to sell? I don't know. But I know the hedge funds are excited. So that kind of gets me to the point where I'm paying attention.
And love them or hate them, hedge funds are here. They're in all these major markets. Again, properties, but that can also, it goes to when they did exit out of the Memphis market, it was a kind of a windfall for all the local investors where there was 300 properties that hit the market at once that were all great first strategies. So
yeah, exactly.
So there could be good and bad in both of those.
Yeah, when others zig, you could zag. We could find stuff.
We can find stuff. Well, and I'll say that it was within our hard money lending division, it's probably 70% of all of our deals are coming from wholesalers. Can you speak to that of why that would be the case versus they're coming from the MLS versus coming from a wholesaler?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think just the consistency of what a wholesaler does, we're just constantly talking to people, right? Our goal is to talk to people, figure out their situations, and find a deal before it goes to market, right? Now, maybe there's a lot of people out there that are in 2.5%, 3.5% interest rates, right? They're there to stay unless there's something that's moving them out of their house, right? And so those deals aren't really moving at clip rate. People are slowing down because I'd love to buy a new house, but I'm not going to take my interest rate from, like, even me. It's like, I'm not going to give up my 2.5% interest rate, even though I'd like to buy a bigger house. I want to take a 6% interest rate right now, right? So that whole area of owners seems like it's slowed down a little bit, right? But for a wholesaler, we usually deal with distressed properties, right? We're specifically, hey, my tenant moved out, there's a bunch of work and I want to deal with it. Hey, I inherited the home. Hey, someone passed away. Hey, there's a divorce. Whatever it is, hey, there's liens on it. We specifically most often work with distress, right? And so in this kind of market, distressed folks are usually going to say, hey, come get it, rather than, hey, I'm going to go take it to market. So as an example, back in the Fraser days, when Fraser was, the ARVs went from 80 to 110, right? When interest rates went down so low, right? Someone who had a distressed property or a tenant that moved out of their house, it was a pretty good move to stick that thing on the market because it would sell within 5 days. Yes. And it would like, man, how is this thing selling for 80 grand and these 25K worked? Someone out there is picking it up because they're just going to hold on to it for 30 years and money is almost free to borrow, right? Now that same client who's looking up and looking at the market and saying, if I stick this thing on the market for 80 grand and Fraser's can sit there for 2, 3, 4 months and all the offers are going to come in 67, right? So if you got this idea of this agent could list it for me as is, or I could have this cash offer that comes as is and accept that, that starts to become more attractive with the market slowed down.
Right. And I would say too, like typically once it hits the MLS, like we can load you up to 100% purchase price at rehab. Typically once it hits the MLS, it's above that 75% threshold. But since you are wholesalers or getting some of these deals, that amount was kind of built in at that low discounted price because it usually gets the MLS, it's at the top of the market value for what it is at that time.
Yeah. And I think you're making a good point. Like folks that are typically in the space wanting to invest heavily, you're going to find a lot of hard money behind those folks, right? And so you stick a property on the MLS, like traditional financing buyers, they'll always pay a little bit more, but they're typically not as savvy on the deal, right? I mean, the good thing about getting connected with a hard money lender is they will help you understand how to look at good deals. right? So you'll look at one, you'll send one over, hey, Alyssa, Richie, look at this, whatever. I think this is a great deal. You'll come back and say, hey, we could loan up to, 70%. Now you got to bring 30 grand to the table. Well, maybe they just saved you from a bad deal. So now I even know, I thought I was going to be all in, though this was going to be free and I could buy it. My ARV was way off, right? And you guys helped them understand that. So I think, having a hard money lender in your back pocket is basically like having free mentorship too. Hey, too much here, here's why. Pay attention to this, right? We've done 100 other loans over here. Here's what we've noticed. Be careful, right? So I think even that is part of the importance of being with a hard money lender too. You don't want to get upside down at a deal. Chase Bank isn't going to tell you that. They're going to say, put 20% down, you can buy. You know what I mean? They're not going to give you any advice on the deal. You guys will give them advice on the deal. So.
And I'll say too, or you say with hard money lending being in the back pocket for wholesalers, because even if you do take it to a Chase, it doesn't matter if it's that much lower than what the ARV is. They're still going to require you to put 20% down, even if it, say for a property that we purchased ourselves and we used a traditional lender, the appraisal came in at 223. We were getting it for 165. We still had to bring 15% down on it versus hard money. It's like they're going to take into account that. So where they could refinance you, potentially you've come out of pocket very little. And so it's been a relationship where I've gotten it at a cheaper price going through a wholesaler, and I'll put it on the MLS and go through hard money because they're seeing that they're taking into account the good deal that I got.
Yes.
And not kind of punishing for it, but it's like, hey, your equity a lot of times is the good deal you got.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, 100%. I mean, hard money is the way to go, right? Oh, it's more expensive. It's like, well, okay, then you'll put 20% down, Then you have 20% locked into your house right away. You were going to use that 20 grand on a rehab. So, you got to understand there's always a give and take. There's always a give and take.
There is, one of our borrowers once said, he goes, yeah, I've got 20% to put down, but he's like, I only have so many 20% to put down.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's why Burr strategy, it used to be cash out refi, 15, 20 years ago, is so popular. It's the only way that you can basically get in and out of houses for free, right? I mean, it's like you don't have to bring any. If you get a really good deal, CoreLend is going to be the one that sends the money, and then you manage the contract or the rehab, whatever, and you sell it. And even if you have to pay fees and commissions and carrying costs, well, at the end of the day, you can make 40 grand on it, and you didn't have to bring your own money to the table. You can't do that with traditional financing. You have to bring money to the table. No, or origination fees and stuff like that. It's like, okay, great. But, relatively speaking, it's far and away the better option. And that goes back to the original point. It's like, get a good deal. You got to find the good deal. You got a good deal, hard money is always a better way to make money more quickly without restrictions.
And I would say too, you as a wholesaler doing with hard money, the speed at which hard money can move. Like, because I know with wholesaling, a lot of times it's, okay, who can get to the closing table the fastest? There's a lot of times you're dealing with distressed sellers, so they need their money quickly.
Yes.
And so that's where I see with going wholesaling hard money is where we can get this moved a lot quicker than the 30, 45, 60 days that are traditional without having to say, well, though you're going to have to make these repairs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I can tell you, if you talk to 100 wholesalers and you give them this scenario, 100 of them are going to say the same thing. Hey, there's a buyer here at the same price as a traditional buyer over here with traditional financing. This guy closes in 14 days. This guy's going to need 45. You're going to take the same offer that can close in 14 days every single time, right?
Yes.
Time is of the essence. Time kills all deals, right? And so even from a buying perspective, if you come to me and you say, hey, listen, I'm offering 110 and I can close in 10 days. And I have a 114 over here, but they want to close in 45 days. I might take the 110 because I'm going to get the deal done, right? Before something goes wrong. So yeah, the speed, I mean, I've come to CoreLend and said, hey, I got to close on something tomorrow. And you haven't done it that quickly, but it's like, hey, a couple of days here, because we have a relationship. We got, hey, I'm a legitimate borrower. I've done this before. I could come to you and say, hey, I need money in 48 hours. Okay, let me see if I can make it work. You got to tell that to Chase Bank, or oh yeah, that's a joke. You said, wait, we need all this documentation and everything. So yeah, the speed is incredibly important as well.
Okay, and going with wholesaling, because and then sometimes there's maybe some confusion of like, okay, because we had with real estate, there was a lot of legislation passed in the last year. What do you see that? I know a lot of people have questions. Are there going to become regulations on wholesalers for what they do?
Yeah. And I don't know what exactly could potentially happen. What I know for a fact is we do some wholesaling in Birmingham and Alabama as well. While we were there, it is now a law that at the title company level, you have to disclose to your seller that you're wholesale. I mean, literally, it's a piece of paper, and they have to sign off saying, I acknowledge that my property is being assigned, right? I'm doing an assignment of contract, right? So in my experience, are they ever going to take away the ability to assign a contract? No, they can't do that. That's like that's way too invasive. Based on, I have some attorney friends that I've talked to. Assignment of contracts are not resolved or reserved for real estate. They do assignment contracts on Wall Street and have been doing it for 100 years, right? Assignment of contracts, assigning your position in something, is never going to go away. Now, the only way that I think that they will bring legislation around this is at the title company above, right? Because they're the ones that are bringing the deal together, and they know, hey, this is going to close. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm just guessing here. But I know that in Birmingham now, if you take a deal to someone, you got a $40K assignment fee, and the seller says, okay, yeah, no problem. How much is it? 40 grand. Well, you got to call a hard money lender because you need a duff close.
That's what I was just going to like transactional funding for a hard money. Exactly.
Right. So
hard money for a wholesaler so that you are like, if you have to disclose.
Yeah. I mean, and look at, SMS marketing or cold calling or all this different stuff. There's a lot that people that are cracking down on that. They're making an effort to make it so that you can't cold call and you can't text. I mean, they moved forward and they've made it a lot harder. Right. But for those that are worried about it, I just keep moving forward. Right. There's a lot of people that'll sit there worried about it, and there's other people that'll keep closing deals. Right. So I do think at some point they're going to bring some legislation around it, but it's just going to be disclosure related, right? So hey, if you're going to do this, you got to tell people you do, right? Which a lot of reputable wholesalers do anyway, right? By, hey, listen, I'm trying to buy this. I'm bringing in a lot of partners. Sometimes I'll sell this to a partner, right? Or a partner will come in and they'll give me a fee for bringing in the deal. I just want to let you know, right? Most people don't do that, and that's this big secretive thing. And then, the deals blow up, or a seller feels like you're taking advantage of whatever. Sellers know that wholesalers and investors are making money. Right. They know you're buying the house to make money. So why don't you just tell them exactly how you're doing? Right. So I wouldn't be too worried about legislation. It's wholesaling gets a rap for being a predatory kind of industry. And it can be. If you can talk to the wrong person, it really can be. And so I don't know if they're ever going to do anything about it, but I think it'll be just this budget.
And in some ways, hard money lending has got that bad rap too. Of where, you're charging this, well, it's less than what if you had brought a partner and they want 50% of your profits.
Yeah.
Well,
and okay, let's say hard money lending goes away. It's like, well, where are you gonna get your money from? We get that deal. So I mean, so that people that are well, it's also a godsend for the lady and all the neighbors that have lived on that street in that burned out house. No one's touched it for 5 years. Someone's got to repair it. It's not going to be Chase Bank, right? It's going to be an investor. It's going to be someone that goes in there and buys it, and they need flexible money to go do something like that, right? So there's a place for everything. It's all perspective, and everyone in every industry can do things well and not. But hard money lending is absolutely critical in a million different ways.
It can increase the values all around when you have these partnerships together. What questions do you have for me?
I mean, we worked together for a couple of years. Yeah, but I mean, we've been money here and there. I'm curious, what are you guys seeing in the market? Has it slowed down, picked up, stayed the same?
Very much of what you brought up of where that 1 to 200, but that's where the bread and butter is, where you've got the multiple exit strategies for it. We're seeing those very much so of where if it's over this 400 or this amount that they are sitting longer, not that they're not moving, they're just moving slower. So we're seeing the exact same thing. But the deals that seem to really have success are the ones that they can get in quickly too, because hard money, the time is of the essence. Like you said, time is of the essence. They can get in there. It's a $30,000 rehab. They've got get that rehab done in 60 days, get it either refinanced out or get it sold as a turnkey rental. Exactly what you're seeing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think keep buying deals. Don't be afraid. If you're going to die, get a leg water, go feet first, not head first, and it'll be okay.
Yes. Well, I appreciate you having you on today. And if anybody is interested, I'm going to let John to tell you a bit about his company. So that way you can either go through us or reach out to him directly. But John's a whole bit of...
Yeah, I mean, any buyers, we're always looking to connect with new buyers. So our company name is Ready Door Homes. You can find us online or anywhere. We wholesale a lot. We double close and sell a lot. I mean, anyone who's looking for deals, we want to partner with buyers. So if you're interested, go to our website, readydoorhomes.com. Just fill out a form and just let us know that you're inquiring to be a buyer. Any buyers can always come and CoreLend to us too, and we'll put you on our buyers list and send out deals, right? Even if you're not looking to buy a house right now, you just want to learn, we'll put you on our list and you can look at all the deals that we send out and learn how to underwrite deals. So yeah, we love to partner with any kind of buyers, and the fact that CoreLend is like in our backyard makes it easier for us to put all the pieces together and close deals quickly. right? So if Richie needs something or you need something, I can, we're right down the street and I can throw them something quickly. It's a good relationship for us. So yeah.
And what markets are you in? And I noticed you brought up Little Rock, you brought up Durham. What markets are you currently in?
Primarily Memphis, Oakland, Lakeland, kind of the Memphis surrounding areas, DeSoto, obviously, and we're in Central Arkansas, in the Rock area. We did do some Birmingham stuff. We're a little bit slower there right now. Right now, Memphis and Central Arkansas.
I appreciate having you on.
Yeah.
So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.